My next guest, everybody loves, as they should. He's the European Affairs correspondent at the Jerusalem Post. He's a wonderful, wonderful writer. He's a research fellow as well. FDD. Those are my guys.
Yep, Foundation for Democracy.
Jonathan Schanzer and Mark Dubowitz, all those guys. And he's one of our favorite guests. It's Ben Weinthal. Good morning, Ben. How are you?
Good morning, Sid. Thanks for having me on.
Great to have you on. Where are you? In Munich today? Are you in Tel Aviv today? In the Bronx today? Where are you?
I'm in Berlin. I just got back from Israel and with some time in Istanbul in Turkey.
You're unbelievable. Like I take I-95 back to Boca. That's how you travel from country to country. So you were just in Israel, and you're back in Berlin today. I heard Ben Carson say a couple of weeks ago, for all the liberals out there and Democrats that say, listen, don't base the United States-Israel relationship on Obama-Netanyahu, because the fact is we're okay with Israel, people like us, and no matter who I talk to, and Ben said the same thing, people on the streets there, okay, people who live in Tel Aviv, we have them on the show, in Jerusalem, in Haifa, you name it, they can't stand Obama. They don't love this country anymore. They don't trust this country anymore. So who's got it right? Is it not as bad as the Obama-Netanyahu relationship, or, like I feel, is it absolutely fractured?
Well, I wouldn't go as far as saying it's absolutely fractured, but, Sid, you're on the money in terms of the friction and frustration from the Israeli side. That is, there's enormous disappointment, great frustration with the Obama administration's policies in terms of Israel, his abandoning Israel in terms of the Iran deal. Most Israelis, the majority of the Israeli society rejects this Iran deal. They understand it's a threat. A threat to their country, but the relationship can be repaired. If you look at the surveys, an overwhelming majority of Americans see Israel as a positive country. They admire the country, and an overwhelming majority of Americans agree with the Israeli society that they reject this Iran deal.
Yeah, I saw the numbers, and it's, I think, only 20-something% of Americans actually like this deal, which is overwhelmingly not in favor of this deal. Then you get Hillary Clinton, for example, Ben, right? Now, she's pro-Israel. We know that. Her and Bill. Now, she has said, I'm never going to turn my back on Israel. Yet she votes okay on the deal and tries to make a case yesterday that it's a strong deal, when we know, in fact, it's anything but a strong deal. So how do I take somebody like that seriously, somebody that has been pro-Israel their whole lives, and vote for this deal, which, in my estimation, is anti-Semitic?
Well, I think that's why she's one of the reasons she's dropping in the polls. Most Americans, I think, ordinary Americans can see through this type of rhetoric and the disconnect between her screaming the revolutionary phrase, I'm pro-Israel, the battle cry, I'm pro-Israel, and at the same time voting for an Iran deal that allows Iran to develop a nuclear weapons device to use against Israel and a missile program that can be used against the United States. So it's, she's going to have a real uphill battle, because Americans remember how bad this Iran deal is and how deadly the regime in Tehran is.
She's one thing. She's a guy at Chicago, Arkansas. Who cares? But somebody like Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Here is, she's DNC chair down here, local politician. She's Orthodox, I believe. She observes, she goes to shul, she's got the whole thing. The kids are in yeshiva, she's got the 2 sets of plates, and, of course, Ben, writing for the Jerusalem Post, you could appreciate all of that. And she voted yes and went on, crying with Jake Tapper how she has a Jewish heart and her Jewish faith. But most importantly, she says, Barack Obama, okay, he called me and assured me. So Debbie Wasserman Schultz, a practicing Orthodox Jew, is okay with this deal, because this president, who, by the way, you can argue is a race-baiting anti-Semite, he said it's okay. How do you fathom that?
Yeah, I think individual power trips and sort of cheap political opportunism is at work in a lot of these decisions. She is chair of the DNC, as you point out, so she's relegating perhaps the security of not only Israel, but I would argue the United States to sort of cheap political opportunism as opposed to really examining what's in this deal. I mean, Charles Schumer in New York, a liberal Democrat, analyzed the 159-page Iran deal and came to the conclusion, I have to reject this deal. And so did Senator Cardin, a Democrat in Maryland. Why she is running scared of President Obama is beyond my comprehension.
It is hard to figure out. I just, although Nadler up in New York did actually vote yes. I'm going to ask you this. We know what the negatives are with the deal. We're giving Iran $150 billion. We're not stopping them from doing anything. We are seemingly slowing the process. They're still going to have 5,000 centrifuges and ways to make both plutonium, uranium, all that stuff. So we're not stopping them from doing anything. The 24-day thing is absolutely ridiculous. So we know all the negatives, okay? But you're on the floor right now, Ben, whether you're Joe Biden here in Miami or Hillary or anybody, Obama, Kerry, and you're going to say, okay, we know those, but here are the positives. Can you give me one?
I mean, this deal is so fundamentally flawed and so defective that I really can't offer one positive. I mean, the only positive I see is constituencies, voters should push their elected officials to negotiate a better deal. And that's possible right now. Congress can reject the deal and push for Obama, influence a change in the Obama administration to negotiate a better deal.
What if I said this to you, though, okay? I don't want to do that. And you can call me a warmonger, or you can call me anything. I'm not a conservative because I'm more liberal socially than some of my down-the-middle friends. So I'm not a conservative. I'm not a right-winger. I'm not Rush Limbaugh. But I don't want to do that. I want America. I'm okay with having enemies, okay? I'm okay with that, especially when we intimidate them, they fear us. I don't want to sit down and do any deals with Iran. In fact, to be honest, between you and I'd like to blow that country right off the map. That's my plan. I'm going to go in, use excessive force. I'm sorry to say this. Women are going to die. Kids are going to die. Tough. That's what I want to do. No deals, no better deals. I want to wipe them off the map. Why can't I do that?
Well, Sid, I have a slightly different take. I would recommend, as a possibility, more saber rattling and certainly knocking out all their nuclear weapons facilities and nuclear sites.
But you can't trust them, and they've got countries like Russia and China who hate the United States and who have money that are sponsoring them. You know what I mean? Forget about Europe, these dopey countries. I'm sorry, I know you live in Germany, but France or all these other countries involved in this treaty, which, by the way, if we would have said to them from the very beginning, we're not doing this, maybe they would have backed out, too. The idea that everybody's in this together, we should have been the one to say, we're not doing this. Maybe you should join us.
Right, that would have been real political leadership. But there are, the military option. I think it's really interesting that you've raised this because it's still a possibility. Why not take out, if they're nuclear scientists, for example, and their engineers hold a joint meeting, and we have intelligence, the U.S. has intelligence in certain countries, why not knock them out in that type of meeting? So one could continue with the military option.
That's what we should do. Find out when these guys are and just bomb it. Take a drone in there and just blow this thing to smithereens. Listen, we know this is a horrible deal. It's a treasonous deal. It's a sad deal. And it brings me to tomorrow, Ben. I've been saying all morning long. My wife actually asked me. She said, every year, September 11th, I do this commemoration show. And it's a tearjerker, and it's tough to listen to be honest. It's 14 years later, and it feels like yesterday for me. And she said, why are you doing that stuff today and yesterday? I said, I'll tell you why. I said, because for people that forgot, okay, that forgot about 14 years ago, let me tell you something. What happened that day, as horrible as it was, will be a Nickelodeon show compared to what Iran will do to us in 10 years. 14 years feels like yesterday. They could have a bomb in 10 years. So for the people that forgot about the people jumping out of windows and getting blown up that day, let's not forget, this deal gives Iran the opportunity in 10 years or less to develop a nuclear bomb. That's why I brought up 9/11 today and yesterday to remind folks just how dangerous this deal is.
Yeah, I mean, Sid, it is very important. I mean, you were in New York during 9/11, as I understand it.
Yes.
I was in New York. I was in Manhattan, living in Gramercy Park at the time, and I spent most of my time after Al-Qaeda blew up the Twin Towers looking for my roommate's friend, Jeffrey Gardner, who was killed in the tower, and going from hospital to hospital and calling hospitals trying to find him, and he died because of this Islamic terrorism attack. The memory is clearly important. Is the question is whether the memory is going to continue to animate action against Islamic terrorism. And under this administration, the Obama administration, I don't see that happening. There's disengagement. They're running scared of Islamic networks. And I would add, and I think this is important because most folks don't realize there's an interplay between Al-Qaeda and Iran. The Treasury Department in 2011 revealed that Iran has an Al-Qaeda network in its country that allows to happen, and the Treasury Department says this network serves as a critical transit point for funding support to Al-Qaeda's activities. So Iran is supporting Al-Qaeda. Folks forget that, and that's why these are two images of the same terrorism bird, Al-Qaeda and Iran's regime.
And by the way, I'm not sure we're running scared of them. I think it's more devilish, more evil than that. I think that, first of all, not only running scared, but sympathize. I think Barack certainly does. And as far as I think John Kerry's daughter is even engaged to a guy who's like half Iranian. And on top of that, they've aligned themselves with a lot of big money. You know that. So I don't think it's as easy as they're running scared. I think it's the other way. I think they're making deals with big money Arabs because they all have something to gain from it even after they're out of office. How about that?
That certainly plays a factor. I mean, the Sunni Gulf states are part of Hillary Clinton's foundation network, as I understand it, and the Iran lobby in the United States plays a role by the Obama administration, including this Iran deal. So you've got some loyal supporters of the Iranian regime in the U.S. who are lobbying and are part of Obama's network to work out this deal, which is highly disturbing and has been severely underreported by the mainstream press.
That's why I brought it up, because and I'm not nearly as smart as any of these folks. It's not even my job. I'm supposed to talk about the Mets and the Yankees, as you know, but I do my homework. I will ask you then, what is the best way? I know you talked about folks emailing and contacting their elected officials. What's the realistic way this thing doesn't pass? This thing gets shot down.
Well, I guess from an American electoral point of view, as you just mentioned, sending emails, calling your representative, in this case in Florida and other places in the country, urging them to vote against the deal. And if they don't vote against the deal, there's, of course, candidates out there who will oppose them in the next election. And the Iran issue, I believe, will be front and center in the campaign among domestic issues.
Right.
But this is so important, as you mentioned, that this is a regime in Tehran that wants to abolish the United States. The supreme leader of Iran is tweeting every day now,
every day,
death to America.
Yeah. John Kerry says he's disappointed to hear that. What did he think he was going to hear, that moron? I get so angry. I'm sorry. Take me back, though. You said you were in Gramercy Park. I'm really sorry to you lost a friend and a roommate that day. I was in New York, but I was on the air, and we're going to play that chilling audio tomorrow. Me and Imus talking about the Giants-Broncos game that was played the night before Monday Night Football, and right in the middle of our conversation, Don actually stops and says, because we were on MSNBC at the time, he says, MSNBC is reporting a plane has hit the World Trade Center. And I would tell you that we went on to discuss football right after, because we thought it was some, little plane that, lost control and hit the tower. It wasn't until the second plane hit that we started to figure out, oh my God, these are commercial jets. And we are, in fact, at war and in the midst of a horrible terrorist attack. We didn't know that initially, as most people did not. So we went about our business. But I know that's exactly where I was. And the rest of the day I spent walking around Manhattan like a zombie, also trying to find people. My wife's best friend, her boyfriend's brother died in Kenneth Fitzgerald that day. What was it like for you days after? When did you leave New York, actually, to cover Israel, Germany, all that stuff?
I left in 2002.
Right after.
Yeah, so I absorbed most of the 9/11 and post 9/11 events in New York City up until March 2002.
And what did you come away with? I spoke to Lionel earlier. We talked about how for about 2 weeks, you may remember, Ben, everybody loved each other. I think Arabs love Jews, and racists stopped being racist, and people who were calling cops pigs all of a sudden respected the police and the firemen. Lasted about 2 weeks, to be honest, but there was that period, Ben, where New York, America came together. Was there not?
Yes, I mean that certainly in New York City. That's what I experienced, and across America. I mean, there was, some of these clinically insane freaks in Europe said, well, America's to blame for this, and then of course the Palestinians in the Middle East were celebrating the attacks. There was that famous footage, but there was a wonderful sense of patriotism and American solidarity after the attacks took place. And I was similar to you when the attacks hit. I knew right away that the second attack, I was listening on the radio, that spelled terrorism.
Yeah.
I left my apartment in Gramercy Park on 24th and 24th Street and 3rd Avenue, started walking down to the East Village, and people were streaming forward with tears in their eyes. And it was just utterly overwhelming. But it was a sense of controlled chaos, controlled, resilience among proud New Yorkers, but at the same time, they understood that we're at war. 14
years later, Ben, how are we looking?
I think we're in the fight against Al-Qaeda. The U.S. has made significant improvements and decimated a fair chunk of its organization, but it's not destroyed. And, of course, the Islamic State is on the rise because Obama disengaged from Iraq. So the report card, if I was to issue a grade right now, it would be a D+ or a C-.
You give them a D+, or they said a B+, a D+ or a C-, which, by the way, is not a very good grade.
Yeah, in terms of Iran,
almost failed.
F.
Yeah, an F.
In terms of Iran, an F.
An F. Yeah, and Lionel was saying to me that he remembered then how angry Americans were with Muslims. You'd see somebody wearing what they would wear, and right away you'd say, "Oh, you did 9/11," and 14 years later, I can tell you that hasn't changed because of ISIS and all these other groups. And, I got a lot of friends that walk, including me. I'll admit this right now. It's not going to sound great, don't care. I walk on an airplane, I see somebody dressed in that garb, and I want to get off. 14 years later, I want to get off. That's just the way it is.
Well, I think that's a reaction that's fairly common, given the high percentage of Muslim men and some women who launch terror attacks. It makes sense.
And you living in Germany and, of course, still working out of Israel, writing, as you are a great writer for the Jerusalem Post, you're really more privy to this and see more of this than we do, because as bad as it is going to get here, and I do believe it will get worse with terrorism and anti-Semitism, you're right in the hotbed of it, right? I mean, Europe and now with what Israel's going through with this Iran deal, I mean, you see this ugliness up front every single day, don't you?
I do, because Europe is really running scared of Islamic terrorism. The European Union doesn't have the guts to outlaw the terrorist organization Hezbollah, the Lebanese terrorist organization funded by Iran that killed 5 Israelis and a Muslim bus driver in 2012. They can't even outlaw that group. The United States outlawed it back during the Clinton period, Bill Clinton, and Canada has, but that's the state of Europe right now. And of course, with lots of Syrian refugees flowing in Germany, I just read last night that the Salafists, the Sunni radical jihadists in Germany, are already recruiting Syrian refugees. Wow. And this group is the one that sends jihadis to fight for ISIS, the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq.
I saw a story yesterday out of a London newspaper about the women now that are coming out and speaking about their experience with ISIL. One lady, in fact, that was a girlfriend of the leader, the same guy that continuously and very savagely, let me remind you, raped the American Kayla Mueller over and over and over again. Made her his wife. They've got pictures of Kayla actually wearing what a wife of an ISIL soldier would wear. And, of course, he was killed with her inside that building that we bombed, ironically. But in the end, people should take a look at that as well. People who are all for Iran deals and making deals with enemies and terrorists. Go read that story today about Kayla Mueller, a beautiful 26-year-old American girl who was forced to spend the end of her life as a sex slave, being raped over and over again by ISIL. Anyway, I love you, and you're great, and your writing is great. You're great on this show, and thank you for coming on today, and hopefully tomorrow is an easy day, Ben. Thank you.
Thank you, Sid. I appreciate it.
You got it. That's Ben Weinthal, who's great on Twitter, too. Got it. That's Ben Weinthal, who's great on Twitter, too. Got it. That's Ben Weinthal, who's great on Twitter.